next question is for you. Can the United States do anything to restart the nearly moribund Arab-Israeli peace talks?
The United States can do something, but the question is, will the United States do anything? I think when President Obama was elected president, he made a wonderful speech in Cairo, where he very wisely pointed out no more settlements. But since then, the settlements have continued, and it seems obvious to me that Israel's plan is to confiscate the property that they want all the way between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River, which means the entire West Bank, and also East Jerusalem, which is part of Palestine. But as I mentioned in my talk, I believe when election time comes, the pressures of constituencies in America deter the president from taking bold action. My hope is that after the election in November, the first week in November, as you know, that President Obama and the Secretary of State John Kerry will renew the United States' commitment to bringing about peace based on, as President Obama himself pointed out, the 1967 borders, modified to some degree by good faith negotiations between the Palestinians and Israel, and also by the fact that the two states will be formed. And those two states would be with the Palestinians on one side, including Hamas and Fatah, and also by the Israelis on the other side. If necessary, I think that there should be a United Nations contingency there, particularly including American troops. And this was something that I did when I had the peace treaty between Israel and Egypt. We put American troops and others in the Sinai Desert to make sure that the peace prevailed. I think the same thing could be done in the West Bank to make sure that Israel can remain at peace and that the Palestinians can remain at peace. So my hope is, and my prayer is, that the United States will take action of a very strong nature to induce the Israelis and the Palestinians to go back to the negotiating table. And I would say that John Kerry and the President can lay down some basic premises on which the peace can be presumed. And that is 1967 borders with modifications, a two-state solution, and mutual recognition of each other with a peace contingent if necessary to preserve the peace.
As a follow-up, President Carter, what could the United States do to encourage Israel to support the solution that you've just described?
Well, the United States has a great deal of influence in Israel when it wants to exert its power and authority. For instance, for many years, the United States has given Israel $3 billion a year, which is about $300 million a day. And this is $10 million a day. And this, I think, should be continued to Israel, but that's something that could be mentioned by the President to the Prime Minister of Israel. I'm sure it would get his attention. Secondly, I think what Israel wants to have is peace. And the United States could commit itself completely, along with the United Nations and other nations, to make sure that Israel can live in peace. Because one of the things that Israel fears is that if they do grant the Palestinians a state next to theirs, that there will be rocket attacks and other things going into Israel. But with an adequate international peacekeeping force, including some American troops if necessary, I think Israel could be guaranteed that they can live in peace. I think over a period of time, there might be some remaining opportunities for Israel to have control of the air cover, perhaps over the West Bank and Gaza. But this is something that can be negotiated only with the Palestinians. My own hope is that Abu Mazen, or Mahmoud Abbas, who is the present leader of the PLO, will exert more of his authority as well. On April the 24th of this year, the Fatah and Hamas agreed to have a sectarian government, a government that had no members from Hamas and no members from Fatah. And that government has already been identified, the cabinet has. And now we're waiting for the Palestinians from the West Bank to go into Gaza and reassume control over the entry into Gaza from both Israel and from Egypt, and also to guarantee that all of the materials that go back into Gaza now are used for peaceful purposes to rebuild homes and schools and hospitals, and not used for military purposes against Israel. That agreement has already been signed, but it needs to be put into effect. So those are 2 or 3 of the things that still are outstanding, that are there on the table. They're understood by everyone. They just need to be implemented, and they can only be implemented by the full exertion of American authority and